Hello. Today I'm going to talk about another topic during our meeting on Stoic Pragmatism issues. Today we have the 8th edition, and the topic for today is APA's criticism of emotional Stoicism justified? So a little bit specific topic. And please remember, APA in this context is American Psychological Association. It is not about American Philosophical Association, Psychological Association. And as usual, I will present some questions and issues at the beginning, and then I will try to answer these questions. So the first question is exactly what does APA 2005 version say about logic defeating / controlling anger? Then, what does APA 2018 version say about the so-called toxic masculinity, which includes self-reliance and emotional stoicism? The third question is, what are the colloquial definitions of Stoicism? And I will talk about that because APA does not seem to give us the definition of Stoicism while talking about it. 4. What a response to APA 2018 might be, and I propose one of the answer, the idea that we are talking about redirecting negative emotions into our good. And number 5, another response. What is wrong with being tougher? What is wrong with self-reliance? What is wrong with fortitude? What is wrong with intelligent action? I will try to answer them. So let me just quote APA 2005 version. Generally, this piece was entitled Controlling Anger Before It Controls You. And it reads in one of its sections, logic defeats anger because anger, even when it is justified, can quickly become irrational. So use cold, hard logic on yourself. My comment is, Stoic pragmatism is sympathetic to such claims, where you can argue that reason, the rationalization, should control emotions to our own profit. Another quote from the very same statement, APA 2005, reads, there is also a cultural belief that every problem has a solution, and it adds to our frustration to find out that this isn't always the case. The best attitude to bring such a situation, then, is not to focus on finding the solution, but rather on how you handle and face the problem. My comment, Stoic pragmatism is sympathetic to such a stance. It is sympathetic to such a stance that says sometimes there are no solutions or very difficult to fix. However, it is more profitable quite often for us, for our emotional comfort, the skills to handle, to face, to deal with the problems that we have to face. And so, as regards APA 2005, Stoic pragmatism seems to be sympathetic. What about APA guidelines for psychological practice with boys and men version 2018? So the first context. Emotional stoicism is a part of traditional masculinity, like homophobia, not showing vulnerability, self-reliance, and competitiveness, are and may deter males from forming close relationships with male peers. My comment, Stoic pragmatism is not sympathetic to this approach. And the other second context, psychologists also strive to reduce mental health stigma for men by acknowledging and challenging socialite messages related to men's mental health stigma. For example, male stoicism, self-reliance. My comment? Stoic pragmatism is not sympathetic to the claim that Stoicism is a kind of pathology. I will develop these issues in the following way. First, I would like to show, because APA does not do it, the maybe colloquial understanding of Stoic, what Stoic means, and perhaps it was the context in which the authors were thinking about Stoicism in such a way. So I took a look at American Heritage Dictionary of the English language, in which Stoic is defined in the following way: one who is seemingly indifferent to or unaffected by joy, grief, pleasure, or pain. In my view, it is not Stoic in the real historical and factual sense as far as modern Stoicism would have it, because we cannot talk about being unaffected, for example, by joy, because in the case of Stoic pragmatism, joy, looking for joy, enjoying joyful moments, it's one of the most important aspects of the whole story. It is not the idea that we should limit or stifle or restrict emotions at all. The idea is instead to redirect negative emotions into something that will become, hopefully, something beneficial to us. Another definition, I took it from Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, reads: Stoic, someone who shows no feelings of dislike, worry, etc., and does not complain when something unpleasant happens to them. Here, I like this definition a little bit more, because maybe it is not the idea of showing no feelings, but rather the deeper idea is here, and this definition probably embraces this, that complaining is sort of weakness, or showing that we are too weak to deal with a given problem. So showing emotions of frustration, for example, or anger, would mean, according to this Stoic idea in original historical sense and in modern sense, by modern Stoicism, Stoic pragmatism, is that actually when you show these emotions, negative emotions, you show your helplessness, which means that you are not showing your skillful dealing with solving problems. That's why it's unproductive to show your complaints, because by showing your complaints, you show your helplessness. And it is not that Stoic pragmatists would advise. Instead of showing your helplessness, try to think about a more productive approach towards dealing or coping with a given problem. So my comment is, these definitions do not fit the factual understanding of what Stoic means. And the other aspect, I'm referring to this quote before when there is such a notion as male Stoic in APA 2018. It is perhaps a commonly or colloquially understood that Stoic means something male, or it's a part of kind of masculinity. But many scholars nowadays pay attention that original Stoicism, not to mention pragmatism today, is not that so much masculinity-oriented stance. And the classic example of this is Musonius Rufus. We may say, in some, maybe it's exaggerated, but initiator of Stoic feminism, or maybe egalitarian dimension of education in case of Stoicism, because in one of his texts we can read, women as well as men have received from the gods the gift of reason, by which we judge whether a thing is good or bad, right or wrong. Here is no, I would say, maybe this way, it is a very humanistic, egalitarian stance that says that we humans, without division into gender, sex, nationalities, ethnic backgrounds, religion, whatever, we as humans are equipped with something very specific, reason, the ability to think. And it is not that males have this and females do not have this. According to this message, everybody, I mean, not all human beings have this, but generally, human beings have been equipped by nature or by gods, as we can read in this fragment. Although gods can be problematic if it is really religious stance or more naturalistic stance, but it's a very different story. Anyway, we have been equipped by a very powerful and efficient tool, which is reason. So we don't have to divide it in amongst people, or this group of people, that group of people, or that group of people. Generally, we have been equipped with this faculty. Some are predisposed to develop this ability, this skill in a better way, and some not. But generally, we humans are equal in this aspect. That's why we can talk about kind of egalitarian dimension of even original Stoicism. So why we have this bad reputation in some circles of Stoic emotions as kind of even a stance that has an intention of killing emotion or eradicating emotions. Perhaps it is thanks to some fragments in original Stoic teachings that seems to be to contemporary readers pretty difficult to accept. For example, in Epictetus, we can read something like this: never say about anything, I have lost it, but instead I have given it back. Did your child die? It was given back. Did your wife die? She was given back. My land was taken, so this too was given back. It may be pretty difficult for us to understand or accept, but we need to understand the context. And my comment here is the following. We need to take into consideration the level of medicine and actual helplessness of most ancient people facing difficulties and had to think of other ways of dealing with serious problems. For example, changing the way of talking about them. So when you have a tragic situation, the Stoics would say, and this Stoic strategy, I think, is a permanent element of the Stoic tradition up till now, and it's gonna be, or might be effective in many cases, that instead of lamenting and showing helplessness, one of the ways of coping with the problem is talking about this tragedy in a bit different way. So that to reduce the tragic, negative, unbearable impact upon our psyche, upon our lives. So instead of talking about permanent loss, an example would be we can talk about giving it back to nature so as to reduce this shock. So I would propose to contextualize such statements and see, for example, the medical solution at that time, which were incomparably low or limited in comparison to ours in the Western world. And instead, they probably wanted to, using neo-pragmatist vocabulary, re-describe the tragedy they have had to deal with or cope with. Modern Stoicism is full of these topics. I mean, emotions and what to do in an effective way. So I'm quoting Pigliucci and others, and Pigliucci says, for example, little is more pragmatic than learning to manage anger and anxiety and loneliness, three major plagues of modern life. So Stoicism is much more about redirecting them for our own good, redirecting these emotions, I mean negative emotions, in order to minimize the number of negative emotions. So redirection rather than limiting or stifling. John Lachs, in the name of Stoic Pragmatism stance, would say something like this about intelligent action. The most notable feature of pragmatists is the commitment to bring life under intelligent and effective human control. And it, of course, it embraces emotional life. So the idea is, again, that emotional life should be in a kind of control by something that probably is more effective in the context of social life at least, but also in individual life in a long run. That is intelligent human control. And on enjoyable ends, he writes the following: positive meaning in life comes from our self-control in being able to convert obnoxious means into intrinsically enjoyable ends. So it is not a stance that wants to stigmatize joyful moments, as it was, I think, suggested in one of the definitions before. In my book, I confirm these intuitions or these claims and statements. So my claim is that it is not that the stifling of our emotions is at stake, but rather channeling them into a sphere where we can control them and thus avoid, for example, the anger and frustration. It is pragmatic for our individual economy of life to behave according to our evaluation about what is appropriate and what is not. It is a life strategy which recognizes stoically the difference between things we can control and those we cannot control, and accordingly locates our emotions in the former rather than the latter. One of the stimulations here might be the ideas, thoughts, philosophy of American transcendentalism, Emerson, Thoreau, which in some interpretations can be labeled as proto-pragmatic. Just famous quotes from Emerson and his work Self-Reliance. This content is the want or lack of self-reliance. It is infirmity or weakness of will. So this is something I did talk about already, that according to the stance, when we show frustration, anger, some negative emotions, they show our weakness, but in the sense of ineffectivity of our doings. So perhaps this discontent or this lamentation, frustration, anger, and so on should be for us a good signal to do something with our being not so much effective in coping with problems. And the other example, Thoreau, pretty famous, he wrote the following: when I wrote the following pages, or rather the bulk of them, I lived alone in the woods, a mile from any neighbor, in a house which I had built myself on the shore of Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts, and earned my living by the labor of my hands only. I lived there 2 years and 2 months. So it is maybe not so much an example for us to follow, but anyway, it is an iconic stance of self-reliance and focusing upon one's possibility to shape our lives according to our own strategy, which is pretty much, I wanted to say exemplary, but maybe not exemplary, indicative of the idea what we are talking about, this independence and control of our emotions. Thank you.